YouTube, and welcome to episode 3 of Virtual History Tours. Today we're going to take a look at the towns of Hopkinton and Milford, Massachusetts. We're on the border of the two towns here at Lake Maspenock, and there is a historical old colonial road which runs in back on the east side of the lake, and everything about it really has been lost to history. And today we're going to take a look at the road itself, where it ran from and to, and the families who farmed the fields which were located up in this area. So the first area we're going to take a look at is the area down here, and we can see there's a small area here called Old Town Road, and we're going to throw an 1831 map of Hopkinton and overlay it, and let's take a look at what Old Town Road was back then. So as you can see, Old Town Road basically used to run parallel to where Hayward Street is now. Hayward Street came in afterwards and they laid it out parallel. So one thing of interest that we can notice here is that at one time, Hayward Street, as it crosses south and goes towards 495, before it was cut off by 495, this actually went over to Lumber Street here. And this right here is, if the 495 wasn't blocking it out, is a schoolhouse. And this was the schoolhouse that all of the people down in the south end of Hopkinton here would have attended. And now, as you can see, it's basically in the southbound lane of 495. So the entrance to this place, where it once used to meet up on South Street, we can take a look at what that looks like today. We'll hop into Street View here and try to get into that area. So on the map, it shows a building here. This does look like it's quite an old building. It was added on to later on, this wing. But I think that this section of it is what we're looking at on that 1831 map. And that road came in right here beside that building. As you can see right here. So this would be where the Koi Sushi place is, and the road came in on the side of that. And the next point of interest along Old Town Road going south is this area over here. I'm going to spin this back north-south. And as we can see here, we have Littlefields Sawmill. Littlefields Sawmill was the first stop here going south on Old Town Road, and it looks like there was a mill pond of some sort right in this vicinity here. So let's just drop our map off and take a look, and sure enough, we do have a small pond here. We've got some walls, and in this vicinity right here, I would say would be Littlefield Sawmill, right around in here. So that's one area of interest on Old Town Road. And then as we go further south on the original Old Town Road, we see we've got a structure here and a structure here and another structure here. And these are three farmsteads that were on Old Town Road going back to the 1700s. And I have another map that I got at the Hopkinton Historical Society, which is this same map by Metcalf, but it has names on it that somebody had done way back. And so we've got some names attached with these people here. And I haven't really been able to find much information on this Haynes or Wilson farmsteads, although the foundation for this one does still exist here. I found it. But this property here is a treasure trove of historical information. And the reason being is that at one point in time, it was owned by a man in the Ball family, a son of Josiah Ball, who was one of the original settlers of Milford and one of the original purchasers of land in this area here. So Josiah Ball was the original settler. Josiah Ball Sr. was the original settler down in this area. He purchased this land along with his brother, and then his brother soon moved away. And the Ball family was very prominent in this area. They would have been the first people who would have been actually utilizing North Pond for fishing, swimming, and whatever. And this family, lucky for us, Josiah Ball Jr.'s papers have been all stored away in Harvard University archives, and I actually found a letter in there written by his great-grandson talking about Josiah Ball owning a slave. It says here, Josiah Ball owned one slave whose name was Andrew Dooner, sometimes written Duno. This slave was presented to him by a friend in Boston when a baby, only 4 weeks old. Andrew grew up a faithful and trustworthy servant, and Josiah gave him his freedom at 21 years of age. He presented him with a white horse for a present. That horse he exchanged for a slave girl in Marlborough whose name was Rose and whom he made his wife. Josiah Ball gave Andrew a little homestead comprising 12 acres of land and a small dwelling house. That land I later sold to Luther Haven. Now, also archived at Harvard was a deed, an 1809 deed from Seth Nelson to Zenas Ball. And in that deed, Mr. Nelson mentions that the land was formerly owned by John Nelson. And from this 1887 publication, we learn a little bit more about John. John Nelson was graduated from Williams College in 1807, being one of 3 to be honored with an English oration. In scholarship, said one of his class, he had no superior. He had struggled hard for his education. His course had been interrupted by teaching. He was diffident and depressed in spirit. He gave his father's note for his college bills and had $5 in his pocket, which he had borrowed. So, in reading that and seeing that in 1809, Seth Nelson is selling this piece of farmland to Zenas Ball, and it's the land formerly owned by his son John, who's now a deacon, doesn't need farmland, and took his father's note to pay for his college. I'm going to just jump to the conclusion that he was selling this to pay off the note. Could be wrong, but it just kind of all falls into place. So we know that the Nelson family owned this property, and I think we can go back even a little bit further to see how the Nelsons acquired it. If we look at the Nelson family tree, we can see that Seth Nelson's mother, her maiden name was Deborah Chapin. And Seth Chapin, her father, was the original person to lay out and survey this area and was one of the original landowners and selectmen in the town of Mendon, which was the precursor to Milford. The town of Mendon split Milford off years later. And this is Milford, Mass now, but at one time this was the border of Mendon's North Purchase. Now the North Purchase is important because in the deed for the North Purchase, the additional land purchased by the town of Mendon to expand their town out is the first mention of the name Maspenock, which was in this deed with the Indians or the Nipmuc, who were the original people who owned these lands. The deed they signed with the Plantationists of Mendon actually named this Maspenock. That's one of the names, original Indian names that still stand in the area. So that's kind of interesting. So that's really cool. We can basically trace this property from the Chapins to the Nelsons and to the Ball family. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the Ball family. And as we mentioned earlier, Josiah Ball Sr. Was one of the original settlers of this area. And I'm going to now drop a map of Milford from 1851 into our view here. And we're going to take a little trip back in time and take a look at the Ball family. So Zenas Ball right here. Zenas Ball is the grandson of Josiah Ball Sr. He's the son of Josiah Ball Jr. And as you can see here, on the North Purchase village, the Ball family was very prevalent. They owned mostly everything along here. We've got Zenas Ball all the way here to Camp Street, Homer Ball and Homer Ball's store. So let's take a closer look at the Ball family here on the west side of Purchase Street. We can see here that the family really owned all of this land and all of this land here. And the Nelson property that was purchased is right in here. So this is behind most of their property. And let's take a little virtual history tour of Purchase Street. Let's take a look if we can see what Zenas Ball's house looked like, if it's still there. Oh yeah, there's a nice old house. So this would have been the residence of Zenas Ball. He's the person who purchased that piece of land on Old Town Road that we're talking about. Take a little. Now if we move south up Purchase Street here towards Camp Street, we see here that in the village there was a church. This was once the Methodist church on John Cheney's land, and it was burned down and actually replaced with a school. And now afterwards it was the North Purchase Firehouse. So we can take a look at what that looks like today. This is the old firehouse. And like I said, there was a Methodist church that sat on this property before. And this was a schoolhouse also in this vicinity, in this piece of property. And that school was replaced with land donated by Josiah Ball, and it's land that is near the land that he had given to Andrew Dooner, his slave that he held and gave his freedom at 21. He gave him a piece of land, 12 acres of land and a homestead somewhere in this vicinity. And it's land that he later sold to Luther Haven. This is called Haven Road here. So I'm not quite sure exactly where the location of that land is that his slave owned. Something that I'm researching. But the school number 9 was donated. The land was donated and the school was built by Josiah Ball. And I believe that Andrew Dooner actually worked on it with him. I was a little bit off where I dropped my street view. So this is the number 9 North Purchase School, District number 9. And this was built in 1832, and it still stands today. Once in a while, they do have tours of the school. I have not been able to attend one. They just had one recently, and I wasn't able to make it, but I hope to be able to check that out sometime also. So if we get to the corner here of Camp Street and Purchase Street, this was kind of the center of this little North Purchase village. And as we can see here, a man named John Cheney, the Cheney family is also very prevalent here in North Purchase, owned a lot of land all in the vicinity. And you can see here, John Cheney's house still stands. That's a beautiful house. And across the street from him stood a bowling alley. Let's take a look at that area right now and see what it looks like today. I'm going to just drop in right on the corner here so that we can get a look at both lots. So I'm facing Purchase Street here. I'm going to go down the road a little bit so we can see the house. So this is John Cheney's house, beautiful brick mansion house that he owned. And this is where the bowling alley once stood. So there's another interesting fact about North Purchase Village. So getting back to Old Town Road, I just want to close out this episode. Getting back to Old Town Road, why was it called Old Town Road? Well, if we look at this map here of 1831, Hopkinton, it shows that the road doesn't really continue to the town line. If we look at Purchase Street, South Street, we can see it crossing, but it looks like the road ends here before the town line. And in my research and looking on Google Earth, and I've done a lot of hiking in the area, the question as to why it was called Old Town Road, it seems to me that this is the New Town Road, and this was put in 1732. But the industrial area of the Lake Maspenock area, where the mills sat and where there was a grain mill, a sawmill, and a woolen mill that all sat down here, it seems like this was the original old cart path, the Old Town Road that went from Hopkinton into Milford. And I've drawn out a path of the original Old Town Road as I've followed it on Google Earth, following the walls of the road. And as we can see here, I'm gonna put the roads back in here so we can see where the existing roads are. If we look closely here, we can see the walls continue past, and they run into Milford, and they run through this subdivision area here. It ran up to some wetlands and some streams, and the road took a turn. You can see it here. It breaks up. It's a very, very ancient cart path, and sections of it are hard to find. I'm on 4/20/18 of a Google imagery date, because in April I don't have the tree cover, and I'm hoping that they'll get a better definition springtime shot of this area at some point, and we'll be able to do even better research with it. But it looks like this came out onto Camp Street here, and that's the way I've followed it. And that's my conjecture, that this was the original town road, 1680 to 1732 or so. And 100 years later, 1830, it's no longer continuing here. The North Purchase has been made. North Purchase Road has run through. Purchase Street has run through now. That's become the New Town Road. Old Town Road doesn't exist anymore. It's just lost to history, as were these families that lived here until today, when you got to find out who did it. So that's it for this episode of Virtual History Tours. I hope that you enjoyed it, and hope you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Have a good day.